Well, good afternoon to everyone. I have a few thoughts about the trip, and then I'm happy to answer your questions. As I have been both in Guatemala and here in Mexico over the last 2 days, this trip has reinforced a central theme in the conversations that I've had, both with the leaders of these two countries and members of civil society and people who have so much invested in the present and in the future. And one of the themes is that there is no question that we are entering a new era around the globe. And this new era has made it quite clear that we are interconnected and interdependent, that what affects one country affects the globe. And certainly when we look at the relationships between the United States and our neighbors in the Western Hemisphere, we know that to be true. The President and I feel very strongly that what happens abroad matters to the people of the United States. We believe not only in the importance and to our national security, to our economic security, to our well-being, that it is critical that we work on and continue to re-engage with our allies around the globe. But we also understand that those relationships have an impact to us domestically. We understand that what happens abroad matters to the United States. And that is why the President will be traveling tomorrow to Europe, and why, as my first trip as Vice President of the United States, I decided to come here to this region and to visit our neighbors in Mexico now, most recently, and before that in Guatemala. On the issue of migration, as we have discussed a bit during this trip, it is a complicated issue. It is complex. There are many factors at play when we look at migration historically and currently. It is also an issue that we must tackle then at every level. In the United States, we are tackling it from the perspective of not only what we must do to address the root causes of migration, which is the primary purpose for my travels over the last 2 days and the work that we have been doing for the last couple of months, but we also must, of course, tackle the issues that are inherent in the situation at the border and what we must do to strengthen legal pathways for people to enter the United States. I want to be very clear that the problem at the border, in large part, if not entirely, stems from the problems in these countries. I cannot say it enough. Most people don't want to leave home. And when they do, it is usually for one of two reasons. Either they are fleeing harm, or to stay home means that they cannot satisfy the basic needs to sustain and take care of their families. I work with another principle, which is that we, as a government, the United States, together with our allies and our partners, such as Mexico, such as Japan and South Korea, and all of those who are internationalizing our effort, connected through the UN, we understand, and through our leadership, we understand that we have the capacity to give people a sense of hope, that if they stay where they want to stay, in the town, in the neighborhood, in the place where they grew up, where they speak the language, they know the culture, they go to that church every Sunday, the place where their grandmother lives. We know that if we give them a sense of hope that help is on the way, that they will follow their first preference, which is to stay at home. During the course of this trip, I have met people from all walks of life. I've met, of course, with President Giammattei. I met with President López Obrador. I also met with members of civil society. I met with youth. I met with members of labor. I met with farmers. I met with young people who are creating things that are only imaginable in fiction, but they're making it a reality. And what I know to be clear is that if we are to address the issues that impact the southern border of the United States, and I've had a conversation with President Lopez Obrador about also the southern border of Mexico, we have to have the ability to address the root causes of why people leave. And we have to understand, if it is a priority to us to be concerned about what is happening at our border, then it must be a priority for us to understand why people leave. And the reality is that most people, when they leave, they don't want to leave, and most want to go back. So that is the spirit with which we approach these issues. I also believe that if you want to fix a problem, you have to go to where the problem exists. If you want to address the needs of a people, you must meet those people. You must spend time with those people. Because the only way we can actually fix the problem is to understand the problem. And that is another reason for this trip over the last couple of days, and for the work that we have been doing for the last couple of months, to meet with people who range from CEOs in some of the largest corporations of the United States about what they can do to participate in a public-private partnership to create economic resources and possibilities for people in this region. Over the last couple of months, we have convened some of the largest philanthropic organizations in the United States, who are all international in their footprint, to see how they can extend the work they do in partnership with the United States government and the other friends we are bringing to the table. Over the last couple of months, we have brought together civil society leaders, both in the United States and those of Guatemala. And I was privileged to be able to meet with them after our first meeting that was virtual, in person yesterday. The work we are doing includes reaching out through our UN ambassador, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, to the United Nations, to solicit support and contributions from our friends around the globe, to renew their focus on this region of the country, understanding the needs that exist here, but also the capacity. What has become clear to me during the course of this meeting and this trip is something I already knew, but has been reinforced, which we all understand. People have pride in the place they're from. People have pride in the place they're from. And so when we're talking about the work that we are doing, we must approach it with an understanding of the capacity of people, and not just their needs, understanding that they have pride associated with where they are from for good reason, based on the history of those places, based on the culture of those places, based on the contributions that those places have made for thousands of years. So this is the work that we have been doing. I'm proud to report that the agreements that we have reached, again, are the result of all of the work leading up to this week, and they are very tangible and very specific. Do I declare this trip a success? Yes, I do. It is success in terms of a pathway that is about progress. We have been successful in making progress. So as it relates to Guatemala, out of that trip with agreements to establish an anti-corruption task force. This was probably one of the dominant themes of my conversations with the variety of people we met with in Guatemala, including concerns about those who are in exile from Guatemala in the United States, who I've also met with and convened. Out of the trip to Guatemala, We have an agreement to create a smuggling and trafficking task force. Again, one of the issues, not only there, but here in Mexico, and an issue I've worked on for a very long time in my career before I even reached the Senate, much less became vice president. The need to address the fact that there are some of our most vulnerable populations that are susceptible to abuse and susceptible to fraud and more horrible things as a result of the smuggling that we have been seeing. From Guatemala, we came out of that with an agreement to create a young women's empowerment initiative and dedicating $40 million to that initiative. Why? I knew it before, and it is not unique to this region. It is an issue in the United States as well. We need to do more as a globe, and those of us who have resources need to do much more to invest in girls and women around the world. We came out of that trip with an agreement to supply $48 million to Guatemala to support affordable housing, agribusiness, and entrepreneurs. Again, I spoke of the young women that I met with who are entrepreneurs. I will tell you that one of the biggest bases for the economy in Guatemala is agriculture. If you have ever met or know a farmer, you have met some of the most innovative people in the world, because they have to adapt, because they have to be creative, because they have to be thoughtful about creating out a situation that may be unpredictable, something that is productive. So we are investing in Guatemala in that regard. In terms of our visit to Mexico, as you know, I met with the president this morning. We had a long meeting, both he and I in person, one-on-one, and during the course of our bilateral meeting. One of the first agreements that we reached, and there was a signing ceremony, is a memorandum of understanding on how Mexico, as a partner to the United States, will, with the United States, focus our resources on Central America, and in particular on 3 countries, El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, where we understand the capacity that the United States and one of its closest neighbors, I joke, our first cousin, our Canadians are also our first cousin, how we can work together with the resources that we collectively have in this region to focus on Central America. We came out of the bilateral today with the President of Mexico and his leading cabinet members with an understanding about what we are going to do in terms of an economic dialogue, which is going to include top members of the United States cabinet, working together with top leaders in Mexico to see how we can expand our economic relationship, understanding, again, the interdependence and the interconnection between the United States and Mexico when it comes to our economies. We have seen over the course of history that there is a direct relationship. When one is doing well, the other is doing well. In fact, with pride, I shared that OECD just recently announced that the United States is going to see an increase in our GDP of 6.9%, which will be the greatest growth that we've experienced in 40 years. We believe this prosperity will be shared just by the nature of it and can be shared with our neighbors, and in particular, our closest neighbors. We talked about agreements around security. Again, the point about smuggling, but also the trafficking of guns, the trafficking of drugs. We had a specific conversation about fentanyl and the need for security around the ports in Mexico, which the president is working on. Understanding in large part it comes from China, enters through Mexico, and goes north to the United States. And for those who are in the United States press, you know the damage it has done when it turns into opioids and the havoc it has caused in our country, the interconnection and the interdependency. We came out of our meeting today also declaring and announcing today $130 million that we are going to dedicate to the labor reform movement here in Mexico. President Joe Biden and I are proud of the fact that we will be the most pro-union administration we've seen. In that way, we see an alignment with the leadership in Mexico. And so we took a meeting today, and I took a meeting with leading labor activists and professionals, lawyers, and people who are organizing people on the ground to talk about how we can support, understanding, again, the interconnection that we have between the United States and Mexico when it comes to our labor force. So this is some of the work that we have done. The issues that are long-standing, by virtue of the nature of them, are never going to be solved overnight. But it is important that we make progress. And I remain optimistic about the potential for that progress. I also believe that if we see the capacity of the people, and if we invest in their capacity, we will see great returns on our investment. So with that, thank you all, and I'm happy to take questions.